Brilliant. Well, thanks everybody for coming and for giving up your lunch times to come and learn about this fascinating subject. It was fun as well. As like we normally have a waiting room and then everyone comes in, but it's actually quite fun. People have drip fed in and we've got a sense of knowing each other a little bit. So I've really enjoyed that. Just for this, it's just for the sort of running order, so we know what to expect. It'll be about 15 minutes or so presentation from the guys, and then we're going to kick into a conversational format where I'll chat back and forth with them, try and tease out a couple more things, or they might ask for my experience and perspective on it as well. And then after that, we'll go into the open question and answer. And I think a good introduction is a short introduction. So I'm going to leave it there and say, Dick and Dirk Jan, over to you. Thanks very much for your time today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me share my screen real quick. Here we go. So first of all, yeah, thank you for everybody in this call for your time, and thank our friends of Safe Landing for this platform to give us and to say something about Aethos. I mean, have you ever wondered what's happening with the around 36,000 aircraft which are currently registered commercial aircraft, when they stop flying? And to be quite honest, I didn't up to 2 years ago or something. For me, there was a black box, and my background is also with airlines. I was predominantly involved in maintenance procurement, but also aircraft procurement. So I bought a lot of aircraft on behalf of airlines, but also sold a lot of aircraft on behalf of airlines, either aircraft which were not fitting the mission profile anymore or which were end of life. And that's also where I met Dirk Jan. Both me and Dirk Jan studied aerospace engineering. Dirk Jan was, I think, 2 or 3 years ahead of me. And what I always found fascinating is that Dirk Jan founded his own company called Aircraft End of Life Solutions, which back then in the day was not done very, very often. And I always followed that with interest. And I also tried to sell Dirk Jan some end-of-life aircraft for Etihad Airways, for instance, but Dirk Jan said they were too expensive, so that was that. But we always kept in contact some kind of way because we're both Dutch. And I learned that Dirk Jan developed a brain tumor, which is non-curable. And so Dirk Jan's time on this planet is limited, and that's why he took a step back from ILS. And with that money, he founded more or less Aethos. And what Aethos will do is fill the gap, which is still there with aircraft recycling. Dirk Jan had his boots on the ground and saw a lot of things which were not working yet. And what Aethos does is Aethos is a non-profit foundation, and we are there to invest in research and in collaboration. So really, really building bridges between industries to make recycling more sustainable and to recycle more, right? So if we take just the aircraft design in mind, aircraft are designed with safety in mind, fuel efficiency, noise reduction, passenger comfort, weight optimization, probably some other things, but not with recycling considerations in mind. They never have, and I don't think at the moment they really are being considered because there's so much other things considered. And that's why Ethos is now there. I just want to clarify some points which are often mixed up. So there's something called reuse, and I think in aviation we can be very proud of ourselves about reuse because we do reuse a lot. That is the components which are in the aircraft. We take them out of the aircraft and we recertify them by repairing them, overhauling them, whatnot, and they go back into the supply chain and they fly, right? And I think aviation business is one of the top businesses which actually do that. Then there's something called repurposing, which is a nice strategy, but it's not a permanent fix per se. Repurposing is, making backpacks from slides or making tents or making tables out of aircraft parts. And then there's recycling, right? And it becomes increasingly challenging. And I'm afraid, Richard, if we look at the 787, it's becoming even more challenging, but we come to that. But uh, yeah, so what we try to do as a nonprofit organization is the funds we receive, that we invest those in innovation, in research, which benefits the community. So individuals or companies within that aircraft recycling community, right? So we always ask ourselves the question, how can we innovate to make the recycling more effective? Just to give you an idea of what we are talking about, which aircraft materials are challenging. That's the plastics with fire retardants in it. Um, um, that's that's often very difficult to recycle it. There's dangerous goods like, for instance, halon fire extinguishers. Those are those bottles in the probably older engines, which you could have exploded when there's an engine fire and then it would extinguish. We use some unique aluminum alloys, and I'm talking more about the skin, but we used two of them, and those are difficult to recycle, also often because they're mixed together somehow. Then we have chrome 6 paint. That was the picture here, but the painting on the material also doesn't make it easier. Then we use more and more carbon reinforced plastics. And then what I found astonishing is more or less cabin. Most of the things in the cabin are difficult to recycle. And I think Tony will chip in later with that, but you could think of seat cushions, overhead bins, sidewall panels, um, that kind of things. Difficult to say or important to say that Aethos only focus on the solutions for aircraft which end up now on the ground, right? We are not lobbying for future aircraft materials. We try to find a solution for the now. So if you look at, what you can see on the tarmac, I think you can roughly estimate. I mean, that's always, depending on what's happening in the world, but that there's going to be 15,000 aircraft to be retired up to 2040, more or less, right? And the difficult materials are aluminum to recycle, and then what I mean is that the aluminum is recycled back into the supply chain of aerospace. Right now, because you mix them, they end up literally as Coca-Cola cans. Composites, also rare materials, and they also started bonding a lot of materials, especially in engines, to cope with the higher pressure ratios and heat. And what you also don't see is that there's a lot of carbon emissions, because if you which you could save, because for instance, I didn't know, but if you recycle aluminium, it's 9 times less energy than new aluminium. I think that's amazing, right? Um, our vision and mission for this is industry collaboration. So that's from airlines, aircraft lessors, to the aircraft disassembly or teardown companies, to the actual recyclers, to the research institutes, which we also have on the call, and really connect those people, and that they start talking to each other and start to give us ideas. Knowledge sharing is important for us, so that if we have a solution, that we share it with the community and everybody can profit from it. And by that we also have some cost reduction, because a lot of change in the industry is either policy, or it's regulation, or it's cost effective. Furthermore, we want to also specialize on practical solutions, right? It's a solution which is scalable, and yeah, in the end, to maximize the efficiency of this. And to do this is an important component of Aethos. We uh, we founded Friends, and Friends is a community. It could be an individual, a company, or institution that shares our vision for sustainability and circularity in aviation. And Friends can support us in different ways. They can be financial, they can be their expertise as in project management, or expertise in certain recycling processes. They can be providing materials, as in, look, I've parted out an aircraft, here's something of carbon composite, here you go. Or, talk and raise awareness that we are not there in the slightest way. So you can see our network as a bit of a triangle, which connects a lot of people. and together we want to drive change. Um, and yeah, if you become a friend, you are part of the building these bridges, right? And what we want from that is information, projects from it, projects that we can execute upon, and also yeah, to enhance recycling solutions. So just to have you an idea of what we have been doing and what we will be doing is projects we did is we invested in battery research. So we had a specialized company look into, okay, which batteries are being used in aircraft, what kind of recycling methods are available for those batteries. Are there batteries in there where no recycling is available anymore? And what's the volume? Very interesting research. It was just also published in an MRO magazine. Maybe we can share the link later. Then we invested in Green Skies Lab. That's a very nice collaboration from the Netherlands. It's basically a joint venture of three universities: the Technical University of Delft, a business university of Rotterdam, the Erasmus University, and a university more in the classical sense in Leiden. And we supplied them with some topics for master thesis, and students worked on that very nicely. And I had also the honor there to be at those presentations. And Ligier and Nicole helped us a lot with this. Other feature projects we will have is it's called Panther. I will talk about this after this slide, but it's a collaboration of the Dutch aviation laboratory ILS, even Aethos. And another one I wanted to share was with eCube, which is a company from the UK, where they actually weighed an aircraft, and from this weight we did a study in how much was being recycled and reused, etc. And we also invest in legal frameworks. So we invested in a lawyer looking at aluminium recycling and the challenges of that to share that with the community, right? So some legal advice which can be used as a precedent. So coming back to Penta, this will start next week. This is a project over 150,000 euros. This is really an example of building bridges with our friends. That's ILS. It's the former company of Dirk-Jan. That is Reef. That's a recycling company. That's the NLR. That's the Dutch Aeronautical Laboratory. And basically, we are the glue in between that. And what the focus is on is basically Chrome 6 paint and the impact on aircraft recycling. Doesn't make it easier to transport the aluminum from A to B. Plus, we have to find out how hazardous this can be. So, fantastic collaboration, which really helps the recycling of aluminium forward, which can also serve for the larger community. Then another one, I mean, I'm talking about recycling, but we also have to see, we also have to set a benchmark. And we worked together with these parties. So one is maybe an aircraft Tom would have flown on, an Airbus A320 from BA. This was weighed upon arrival. Then it was disassembled. They did their magic and they measured the outcomes, right? And from this, they achieved that 80% of the aircraft is being reused, repurposed, or recycled, and 20% was waste, right? But if you would measure to AFRA standards, AFRA is an aircraft fleet recycling association, a branch organization. The ratio is 70% is being recycled and 30% is waste. And this is also something, the younger the aircraft, the more you can repurpose, right? Because there's more parts available, you can sell more parts. The older the aircraft, the less you can repurpose. So that's something to keep in mind. So being a friend, you can help us with maximizing the circular innovation, right? If you connect with us, me, Dirk Jan, we also, by the way, we work together in a team. I also see that Rob joined the call. He's a volunteer from us, which is very nice. And Ligeia is also a board member. So connect with us so we can share our vision with your network. If you have any ideas or challenges, let us know and just support Aethos, right? Fewer projects, drive sustainable progress. Really, every action is something we could work with. So I did. So if you want to donate, I have a nice QR code here. You can join us on LinkedIn where we post nice articles or view our website. So yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, if there's any questions, me and Dirk Jan are very happy to answer those questions for you.
Thanks so much for that, Dick. I'm gonna steal the floor with you guys for 10 minutes or so, I reckon, and then I'm gonna invite everybody. So start thinking of your questions already, but hopefully some of our conversation now might fire up some creative questions as well. Thank you for that talk. As I said, for those who didn't know, but I told Dick I'd done no research into this before coming in. I was coming in deliberately blind to see what came. So some of these questions may push the limits of there's no such thing as a silly question, but we'll see as we go. So I wanted to start with you said very early on in the talk that airlines change because of either policy and regulation or cost reduction. And for starters, I was like, I'm going to write that on my wall. That's the theory of change in aviation summed up. But I wondered, from your point of view, in terms of aircraft recycling and reuse, to improve on it further, is it going to be as a result of policy or as a result of producing cost reduction to airlines, or sort of how much of both? Have you thought much about that?
Yes, we have thought much about it. I think it's more. Look, I worked for an airline myself, right? And I was not aware of this. And often it's also most of the aircraft are also owned by lessors. There's some exceptions, so it's a black box that goes away. But if you indirectly cost savings, if you can do it more, um, uh, if you recycle better and therefore it becomes cheaper, the recycling of the aircraft becomes cheaper, and therefore it's easier to give it to a company which does it well, right? And the other, I think, policy. I think it's also what I said in that people should know, right? It's very strange that we sit in an aircraft, we sit on the interior, but nothing can be recycled yet from that.
Mm.
So I think if the customer base would start knowing this, or people start knowing this, then it comes back to the airline itself, and maybe airlines will demand for solutions. Does that
Okay, so
answer your question a little bit more?
yeah, there's an awareness element as much as
Yeah,
anything. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if not if, so I'm now a friend of Aethos, obviously, as we all are. We've all signed up to be friends. Say in this theory, I still work at BA. How would I go? What would I go? And I want to go to the BA managers and say, look, I've been to this Aethos talk. It was brilliant. What would be the key things that you'd want me to deliver to that manager to say, learn about them, or this, make a business case to BA because they'll obviously be interested in cost reduction. What kind of things would I want to focus on having that talk with the manager?
Well, what I'm currently working on is a workshop for airlines to create that awareness and to let them see how an aircraft teardown works, um, where still the challenges are, which companies there are, and so on, just to create that awareness. So that would be one thing. What would be nice to talk about with British Airways. And the other one is just to let them see, because there's a lot of attention on, and rightfully so, on sustainable aviation fuel.
Mm.
But I think if airlines know there's still a long road to go to recycle aircraft in a proper way, that will also raise the attention. And in the end, if you can recycle aircraft uh, better, uh, yeah, it's better for everyone, right?
Yeah, definitely. I
And
wonder.
it's also an easy access, as in the aviation wants to grow more sustainable, meaning aviation fuel, but the time that require will be very long. Moving airplanes from fuel use to electric will also take decades.
Mhm.
And the aviation sector also need to show that there are certain steps we can take now. and improving the recycling of the materials is relatively easy, but it will cost a little bit of money. But yeah, that is not a lot of money, but it will give
Yeah.
some good signs that they at least are doing their best.
When you pitch this at the moment to any industry company, how is it received? And I'll tell you the reason I asked the question is because I feel we have another relatively low-hanging fruit, which is contrail reduction. But often, if you pitch this to an airline, they're aware that passengers don't really know that contrails is a problem. So some of them, I think it's fair to say, are loath to do anything on contrails because at first they'd have to hold their hands up and say, "This is actually a problem that we've never really told you about." And I wonder if aircraft recycling also falls into that. So I'm wondering, yeah, their response so far when you've gone to them with this as something they could be doing.
What I've seen so far in the 3 months I'm there, it's so we talked to I won't say which one, but to an OEM, and some OEMs also take back aircraft. If you sell a new aircraft, they take all back the old ones, right? And
Hmm.
they're tearing down their own aircraft, and they see the problems, and they were very, very interested in this topic, and they have a long-term vision about it. They already thinking ahead.
Okay.
So I found that very, very positive. But you're also right. There's some that and airlines have so much on their plates. There's always another challenge to cope with. Your AOG here. Your engines are laid out of maintenance. You have to sublease. There's so much going on. Um, so it's mixed within airlines, I must say, until now. The
Yeah, for sure. I
interaction.
wonder, is it fair to say, because what I always think with like contrails and other changes is we just need like one airline to be a pioneer who admits the problem and then is the first one to start like saying, but this is how we're going to fix it and we're going to be a leader. Because then any other airline who's been slow, you can say, well, they're now doing it. Is that fair? If you can get like the one you referenced, you've talked to, if you can get one, you can then maybe encourage others.
Go ahead, there you go. I thought you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, I just want to make it clear that um, it requires a little bit more knowledge about the subject. There are too many people that are saying our airplane is being recycled, right? But they simply do not have the time or the understanding yet to balance between the different solutions that are available.
Mm.
They are typically just going for the financial best solution. And
Yeah.
that seems to be can be balanced depending on their other limits in the decision process. But there are definitely aircraft challenges known where it's much cheaper to fly those airplanes somewhere else, and then you have not that waste challenge that you might have in other countries where you are not allowed to dump it anymore, for example.
Hmm.
And you might be aware of this challenge in the ships world. Ships are brought to India, for example,
Mm.
because of a lower cost, but also because of a lower environmental demand on how to deal with it. So yeah, we definitely want to educate the complete aviation world about the different challenges and the options. And yes, some of them might cost extra money. And then they can tell them, look, we're just going to follow the limited legislation.
Yeah, yeah.
But they can also say, no, we want to do something extra. And that's what we're trying to let them know how to make that decision correctly.
Yeah. Interesting. I've got a technical question, and then at some point I'll open the floor to everyone else to get to give you questions,
Mhm.
which is you mentioned that the 787 was particularly bad, and my only question was, well, two actually, is the 350 also quite bad then? Because I was assuming because of composite materials. And if they are both bad, then why are they bad? And can that be overcome in 20, 30 years' time when we start retiring those, or is that insurmountable?
Well, they're not worse than the other aircraft. It's just another challenge on the plate there
Sure.
because the former aircraft were from aluminum. The structure of a 787 is carbon. Same with the A350, and that's just more at the moment more difficult to recycle because There's what I've seen. There's companies working on it, but all do their own things. If there's a solution in 20 to 30 years time, Tom, that could very well be. That could very well be. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks for
The,
that. I've got,
the, the,
sorry,
the,
go on.
yeah, no, the carbon fiber reinforced plastic is a big challenge. If you compare it to an aluminum airframe, the only way forward at the moment is to simply dig a hole, throw it in there, and never look at it again.
Yeah.
In that respect,
Yeah.
the aluminum from aircraft at least can be what we would call downcycling, and I hate that word, by the way. Recycling might be possible just by splitting up the different aluminum alloys. For carbon fiber, there are also research being done, but it's extremely difficult and not easy to do something with it. And when the airplane was designed, it made a lot of sense because lowering the weight of the airplane reduces the fuel usage per passenger, and that's a fantastic environmental gain. But yeah, nobody asked the question, should we use a material that can't be recycled? And yeah, it might be possible, but that will definitely cost money.
Yeah.
And then the question is, who's going to pay for it?
Yeah.
And then if the owner is not aware of the extra cost, and as a result decides to fly the airplane somewhere else where he doesn't get that extra cost, yeah, then we didn't solve the waste problem. But they did get lost of the airplane.
Yeah. I want to, for my last question, I want to zoom outside of the aviation industry because at the start you said that actually aviation has quite a good history on reuse in terms of the amount that is reused. And I was just wondering, do you think Aethos could ever have a position where it can teach other industries, either as consultancy or, by posts on social media and stuff, like, can other industries learn from what aviation does well? Like, is it a transferable model, do you think?
I recently gave a presentation at an organization that's helping the windmill industry
Okay.
because they're also confronted with waste challenges, and they want to know how the aviation is successful for the reuse side. But then they are way more advanced in the recycling side of things. The blades, the windmill, it has similar challenges. But yes, they have materials that are much easier, or if the quantity is high enough, that makes recycling possible. So yeah, we're definitely building bridges with other industries to see what they're doing, what we are doing. Because to be clear, we are convinced that aviation simply doesn't have enough waste. So we need to work together with other industries where it has a similar material stream, combine that, and then get the cost under control and the capacity under control.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks, guys. And thanks, everyone, for bearing with me while I fired off a volley of my own personal interest questions. Finley, if you could stop the recording.